So again, my name is Glenn Daniels, and welcome today to Management Skills for New and Prospective Managers. Still waiting for a couple people to get signed in. I'd hate for you to go through 2 days of class and not get your credit for getting signed in. However, we do the Cahoots a little bit different than what you might have experienced with other teachers. I have a Kahoot that will run this morning, then we'll start a brand new Kahoot for this afternoon, and do the same thing for tomorrow. A Kahoot for the morning and another Kahoot for the afternoon. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. Just be highly respectful of those who are here on time and ready to go. And so let's start. Da-dun, da-dun. So this is just so you get an opportunity to kind of get used to what the Cahoots are and how they work. So it's no big deal for you. Hopefully you can just get used to them. And your first question is a poll question. I'd like for you to share your experience as a leader. So all you have to do, if you're taking the Kahoot, just click on the proper color. So if you have less than 6 months, select the red. Have more than 6 months but have never been formally trained, select the blue. You're here to prepare to become a supervisor in the future. All right, so please give me your answers. You have about 10 seconds left to go to get your answers. That would be fabulous, fantastic, if you will. Pretty please with sugar. I'm just kidding. Okay, so we have about 63% of the people who have been supervisors for more than 6 months but never have been formally trained. So kind of know where we are. If, okay, and then let's do the next one, and then we'll talk about a couple other things. So if you will, please drop the pin as close as you can to your current location. Now, if you live in Canada, I apologize. I still haven't been able to find a map of Canada where I can show the provinces on there at the same time. So I want to get both Canada and the United States and Alaska and Hawaii all on there. So if you will please just drop a pin at, as close as you can to your current location. Fantastic. Got a lot of people down that Texas way, it looks like. Um, so you got one in Florida. Hope all is well for you there in Florida. And then one out in California. Part of the reason why I asked this is because we usually get a pretty wide spread where we have people on the East Coast, Eastern Standard Time, all back to the Pacific Standard Time. When we talk about lunches and breaks and things like that, I don't say the hour, I just say the minute. I maybe say like 23 minutes after the hour. Please be back at 25 minutes after the hour. That way, you can just look at your watch and say, okay, it's 23 after, be back at 25 after. Cool beans, you bunch of jelly beans. Oh, in case you're curious, I'm from the best state and the best city in the world. Enough said. Are you a member of the Prior Plus Learning Program? Give me a yes if you are, which is red, blue if you're not. No. So now you may have noticed there that we had more time left on the timer, but as a general rule, as a not a general rule, but as a rule, when everybody's answered, it just stops and we get there. So we see we have 63%, so about two-thirds that are not, and about a third that are. So those of you that are, throughout the course of the next 2 days, I'm going to be giving you additional details, additional on-demand classes, additional all day long classes. Just make a quick note of them. Tomorrow I'll put into the materials section your resources so you have all those, but just make a quick note of them. You'll find them useful, I believe. Let's do another poll. What is your favorite time of year? Now, this is the first one that's right or wrong. If you get it wrong, what can I say? Now, of course, I'm kidding. There can't be a right or wrong answer for your favorite time of year. But as you can tell from the picture, mine might just be, and you also got a little hint of where I'm at, too, by the way. So, all right, let's see. We got 7, 8. So everybody said fall except for one person who said spring. Wrong answer. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. All right. So you got a good feel for how that goes. We'll come back to that in a little bit. Got the number down. Do not turn it off. If you turn it off, you won't be able to get back in. If you lose the connection to it, you won't be able to get back in. So don't do that. Let's take a look here. Let me get the right screen up for you. so you can see the PowerPoint. I have too much stuff open on my computer, I believe. So let's just go down here, go to meeting. There we are. Share something else. Da-da-da-da. This is what I want to share. All right. So, in addition to go to meeting, you guys may have or may not have noticed that there are some new. We go. I'm sorry. This is the Kahoot. Their GoToMeeting has changed its interface for us a little bit. So let's just walk through that real quick. So this is what the new interface looks like. If you have a question, and this is just to talk to me only. Someone talks to me, doesn't talk to anybody else in the group, just to me only. And so you just click on that box up there. The materials right now, the only thing in the material box is the workbooks. If you don't have the workbook, you can just click on that and download the materials. If you need to change any of your settings, particularly in this case, your audio settings, that's where you'll change them at. Okay. So here now, what we do in order in full participation, we're going to do reactions. So every now and then I'm going to ask you to throw me a thumbs up if you've done this before, a thumbs down if you haven't. You can react to other people. So if I read something that someone else has said, you can react to, hey, I like that or that's wrong. Um, so you can use that. Plus, I'll ask you questions that I'll have you type in the questions, and then I'll have you do the Kahoot. So kind of hang with me, pay attention to it so you can see what's going on. You can be there. You also have the closed captioning box if you need it. Okay. So again, on the screen, it shows where to type your question into your question. If you click on the question box, you just type your question where it says enter question, and you can go from there. Settings, a little bit self-explanatory. Again, if you need the materials, you just click on the materials that you need, and they're right there. Okay? And the reactions, if you want to throw out reactions, you just that's the way to look. And then if you need to close caption, you can adjust the color and everything like that. All right. So the times you see on the screen right now, they're just times really based upon Central Daylight Time. So, and then also just pure estimates. Um, Throw me a thumbs up if you have something that's a hard stop for you at lunchtime. I mean, there's not that many of us here today. Reason why I ask because these times are flexible. Okay, they're not really locked in stone. It'll just depend on where we are. So I'm looking to see if anybody has anything flexible. I mean, anything that absolutely have to be. So throw me a thumbs up if you have to be someplace right at that mark time for Central Time. A thumbs down if you could be like 5-10 minutes late or something like that. If we are that late or if we're a little bit early. So give me a thumbs down if you're able to be late. See, right now I'm not seeing anything. So now I wonder if anybody's hearing. Oh, there we go. Okay, it's on the other screen. That's what's wrong. Okay, so I have two screens here. I have the screen that all my notes are on right in front of me and the slides. And then over here on this side, I have your questions and I have your reactions, and those type of things over here this way. So every now and then I'm gonna turn and face this way. Forgive me if I'm a little bit late in getting my stuff out to you. Oh, I'm sorry. Forgive me. Excuse me. Forgive me if I'm a little bit late in answering any questions because it's over here. So I will have to turn to look over there to see it's there. Okay. Now, one thing about today's course and tomorrow's course, I am not going to teach every page of the book. I'm sorry. I'm just not. I think you know how to read, but I also deep down know that it's more important that you learn how to do things. Okay. Not just what things are, but how to do things. Okay. So we're going to do some exercises and some things throughout the course of these next 2 days. So you know how to actually do it. You know how to deliver a feedback session, or you know how to have a one-on-one session, or you know how to be a great communicator, or how to be a great delegator. Things like that. We're going to go into, and to be honest, I don't care how long it takes to get it done. As long as by the time we get done, 70, 80% of you know how to do it and you've been responding well. So when we get into those type of things, there'll be a lot of questions and we'll give you some time They'll type your answer in as needed. That's just a thought for you so you understand that I'm not going to be going through every page of the workbook. And I'm also not going to be, well, let me rephrase that. I'm going to have a good time. You have to understand this about me. As you get to know me through the next 2 days, you'll realize that I'm a geek. I mean, that's just the way it is. You see it on the screen, the trainer, that's me in my Jedi Master robe, so that's just me. I'm a geek about things. I laugh at my own jokes. So I don't expect you to laugh at my jokes, but I laugh at my own jokes. I just crack myself up. All right. So there you have an idea what the day's schedule is going to be like. All righty. So page one in your workbooks. Let's talk about beginning with the 7 guidelines. Okay. These are 7 guidelines. It's going to make a huge difference in how well you do as a leader. Okay. Um, the very first guideline is to learn about your people. Okay. This is something I gotta get really put through to a lot of folks. I think a lot of people struggle with this idea of getting the information necessary. I think later on in the class, later on this morning, talks about how we have sometimes get confused and start shooting for information about the entire organization. I have to really get you locked in to learning about your people. So page one of your workbook kind of lays that out for you. And let me get to that page one. I'm on page 47 for some reason in the workbook. So let's go to page one. Okay. I think we can learn about our people, learn about our own divisions. And I want to ask you the question. They have 5 questions there. But those are not the questions I really want to ask you. So here, let's do this. Let me go back to the Kahoot real quick. We're in the money. It's just a second. Takes a second for me to get coordinated to do it. Okay, we'll go back in the Kahoot real quick. What are the products produced and are the services rendered by your work group? You got to type your answer there. For me, you got a little bit of time to do it. If you're using your tablet, you got to type it on your tablet. If you're using a different web page, you got to type it on a different web page. Your phone, you got to type it there. So please go ahead and type what are the products produced and or the services rendered by your work group. We have about a minute to go, but like I said, the sooner everybody gets through, the sooner we can move on. Hmm. All right. So 7 of the 8 people responded. Let's see. Appraisal value, excellent client service in the alternative dispute arena, legal services, surgery. We produce ice cream at our small business establishment. We serve people who come in all across the country. My goal is to provide a smile with a savory meal. We are an answering service. We answer phones for many different companies. We provide support and educational resources for prostate cancer patients and their families. And the county office that maintains and provides all records. Okay, one, two. Okay, cool. 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. So one person didn't get in that time. Okay. All right. Let's take the next one. Who supports your team directly? What other team supports your team directly? Okay. Who supports your team directly? All righty. Just a little bit more time left to go. All right, let's see what we have here. By the way, Miss Sarah, thank you very much for you see how long I was behind the question. Okay. Um, all right, and if you will, please make your answers inside of these questions inside the Kahoot. If it's a Kahoot question, put it in the Kahoot. If it's just a normal question is put inside the question box. Okay, so let's see what everybody has to say here. The administrative departments, all departments work together. Okay. Uh, my whole company supports us, business managers for our office, first level supervisors. We have our boss owners who really help provide guidance. Okay. Our mission and development teams. Okay. All righty. So those are, I like those answers. There's nothing wrong with those answers. I would just want you to think about first line, the first line, the very first person, very first other team that supports you if you have more than one team. But those are all good answers because oftentimes it is a nice rounded picture. So I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just throwing that out. So how long does it take your work group to make one unit of the product or to render your service? The one answer that's wrong is when you say it varies. We're talking about the average. Okay, you may have something that takes you 2 hours one day, and then it's the same. Maybe it's another question, another problem takes 6 days. What is the average it takes? And you'll see why this is really kind of critical that you give me the average between everything that you're doing. All right, let's see what answers we got there. 4 hours, 1 year, the average is 6 weeks. Okay. Depends on the type of surgery. However, is about 1 hour, 10 minutes, anywhere from 3 to 10 minutes. Okay. 3 to 4 days, 5 minutes, 5 to 15 minutes. All right. I think it's critical that we look at and say, okay, the average is this, because when we look at the overall organization, people report to us, one person may be, the average may be, let me see, 10 minutes. Okay. The average may be 10 minutes to render that product or that service. Okay. But if one person is doing 5 to 6 minutes per product, that's their average. They look at the whole week, the whole month, and they're doing the whole thing in 5 to 6 minutes. Maybe there's an issue there. As much as if someone's doing 20 minutes, the average they have is 20 minutes. Maybe there's an issue there. If you're aware and you know your people, okay, you know those type of things. Okay. Now, when you look at that one answer says the type of surgery, okay, it depends. But the average right there says you're doing. Let me see if I'm going to guess right. You're probably doing 12 hours a day, 12 surgeries, 10. I'm sorry, 11 to 12 surgeries a day. Okay, which means that's why you're working 20 hours a day, right? But still, you kind of start to see that maybe they stretch out to an hour and 15 minutes because you're tired or your team's tired. Okay, instead of that hour. These are some of the numbers that you wouldn't want to take a look at to see where they're at. Okay, let's do another open-ended question about this. How many products are produced or services rendered in a day, week, or month? So, like we said, that surgeon, I said 8 hours. I bet they're doing 10, 11 surgeries a day, though. Oh, roughly about 10 seconds left to go. Okay, let's see what we got here. And I am so sorry. I just now looked at the question box. I'm sorry, Joey. I missed yours. And I'm glad the Alicia yours is showing up or did show up. Let me see it. So, how many products are produced or service rendered in a day, week, or a month? So, is that 30 in a day, 30 in a week? 30. So, at least 300 a day, including all documents. Okay. Someone has 100. Is that 100 a day, week, or month? Average 32 cases a day between the 5 to 8 surgeons on a rotation between 46 doctors. Wow. Okay. 280,000. Okay. Day, week, month. Okay. Our consistent days, we scoop about 200 scoops of ice cream. Okay. I like the way you did. Okay. We answer phones, unlimited number. No. Okay. Six per day, 20 to 30 a week. Okay. Unlimited numbers means that you could be getting 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 calls a day. Reminds me of a story where it happened actually that I have the article that I never I'm going to put it out. Last Christmas, my dad had just passed away a little bit a month earlier, so my mother wanted to travel. Okay, and so my dad had bought her a new car to travel in, but she couldn't drive it. So I was supposed to drive it. 2 days before I was going to drive it for her, brand new car. I mean, we had probably driven it 12 miles in that time period. Because, like I said, my dad had passed away like within a week of buying it. Okay, so we just weren't using it. But the electronic systems, in the car wouldn't come on. So the driving assist, all the stuff that's supposed to come and help you not hit things and keep your line, all that stuff wouldn't come on. In fact, we had to have the car picked up and towed to the place. So they fixed it. Then the next day, it broke again. It stopped working again. But this time, the tow driver showed me how to jerry rig it so to get it driving. So I drove it down there. The supposed supervisor manager, told me that we would have to wait our turn because they get about 140 people. No, what is it? That's an exaggeration. 43 people. No, he said like, yeah, you're like 37 to 40th in line. You're going to have to wait your turn in line. Those are not the right numbers. I don't remember the numbers. But the way it turned out, when you looked at a typical 10-hour day, if they had that many cars showing up, that means they have to service the car every 6 minutes. If they have that many appointments, people picking up their cars the same day, that means they have to service the car every 6 minutes. So to me, that gentleman had no idea what he was talking about. He did not know his actual service, and he just thought he could just lie about it to somebody. Maybe he knew how many cars he was supposed to have their day. And this is a holiday. I mean, we're a day away from Christmas. And he said, "No, you're gonna have to wait you in line. We'll get it to you after the holidays." And then he said, "If you don't like that, then you can take your car someplace else." I said, "No, we're warranted here, and this is where this is a new car shop." But the whole bottom line is he did not know his numbers, and he thought he could just throw out a number somebody's going to accept. You need to know your numbers. You need to know your numbers because you need to know your people. How can you gauge what your people are doing if you don't know your numbers? Okay, so a lot of you, it's great. A lot of you have your numbers there. A lot of you have your numbers laid out, and that is perfect. Okay? That is perfect. I probably messed up my. Okay, that's perfect. So let's take the next one. How many complaints per month does your unit get about your products or service? How many complaints a month does your unit get about your product or service? And that includes your internal. Okay, about 10 seconds, less than 10 seconds to go. All right, let's see where we're at there. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so enlist two as reinforcement get about 1,000 a month. Okay, 5 per week on average, so that's 25, 20 a month. I'll learn how to do my math later. 15 per month. Okay, 83,000 a year. Okay, 4 to 5, approximately 20 to 30. It's fairly rare, but about 3 to 5. All right, these are things that they want you to kind of get a hold of. Okay, what are your top three KPIs? What are your top three KPIs? Your personal top three KPIs. And if you don't know, just put in I don't know. All right, about 10 seconds left to go. All right, let's show some answers here. Da-da-da-da. Repeat clients, revenue per panelist, revenue per office, improve our social media engagement, grow your social media, maximize the efficiency of new platforms, productivity numbers, consistent um, con- cons- mm, constituent satisfaction, with service accuracy, savings amounts, time to complete RFPs, number of negotiations completed, successful surgeries, PVS studies, maps, reviews, and CAE certification. That's great. That's great. Absolutely fantastic. Okay, there's a lot of good answers. You guys really had that there. Let me get us back to where we're going. Back to our PowerPoint, away from the Kahoot. We'll get back to the Kahoot in a little while. It'll be a few minutes, but we'll get back there. Okay, we want this screen right here. So, as we're talking about these ways for you to learn about your people, in the question box, because you have a list of, and you have different things that might help you think, but in the question box, is there something that you do to help you to get to know your people that is not listed there? I mean, they listed like, job applications and resumes and job descriptions to help you get to know your people a little bit. Okay. But do you have anything else? Just put that in the question box for me if you have one. Um, what other way other than what's there? Enneagram test. Okay. Oh, Joey, you knew it. You knew I was going to go there, didn't you? Didn't you, Mr. Joey? But here, cats. First bag of jelly beans is out. Okay. So I'm not going to read it right now. I'm give everybody else a chance to jump in. Okay. Carlos says I work shifts with them. That's a really good way to do it. Okay. Just work by asking questions. Caroline says that. Carolyn, not Caroline. Carolyn says that. One-on-ones. Okay, so Joy was the first one to say that, but Lisa, you got a bag of jelly beans catch. So we're asking to see if there's any additional ways that you might think we can get some information to get to know your people. You're gonna hear this over the next 2 days so many times. You're probably gonna go, because I firm, firm, firm believer in that you must have regular scheduled one-on-one meetings. It must be regularly scheduled, and best practice says I'm gonna have these one-on-one meetings with the people who report to me directly once a week. So I have 7 people who report to me directly. Okay. I have a one-on-one meeting with them. And it's tough because I travel, I have these things. It's gonna be tough. But they have a regular scheduled one-on-one meetings, and it works because I have a little side advantage, which this is something I never thought would come in handy for me. Okay, or I never thought I could afford it. But when we got our new CEO, we started looking at things, and it was decided that certain people needed an administrative assistant. So I got an administrative assistant, Amber, one door down from me. She's my gatekeeper. She's my schedule keeper. She answers emails for me. And so I do not lose my one-on-one meetings and the regular schedule. So we know when they're going to come up. If we have to make any changes, we do it 6 weeks in advance. Okay. One-on-one regular scheduled meeting. Here's what happens in those meetings. It wasn't long, 2 to 3 weeks into these meetings, before each one of those people reported it to me, decided it was their meeting. They felt like it was their meeting, and they guarded that time. They wanted that time. Everything I need to know, I got from them. So one-on-one regular scheduled meetings, I'm coming for the next 2 days about that so very often. You need to have regular scheduled one-on-one meetings. The other thing I would suggest that you do is remember the who we sometimes consider the lowest person in the hierarchy of the organization. So I have a friend who has 17 different restaurants up and down the California coast. 17 restaurants up and down the California coast. And he'll go visit them. Okay. And what he'll do, he'll first get there, sit down and talk with the manager and maybe some of the supervisors or the shift manager or the general manager, sit down and talk with them. But after he gets through talking with them, what he does next is he goes, takes off his jacket, his vest, whatever, and he puts on his smock, an apron, some gloves, and he goes, washes dishes with the dishwasher. He said, Glenn, I do that because once the dishwasher forgets that I'm the owner, they start talking. And I start finding everything I need to know about that organization. If you want to know everything about this organization, get Amber on the phone. If you're going to get promoted, or if you want to know about the people who report to me, get Amber on the phone. Okay, she knows everything. And some people consider the administrative assistant kind of low in the hierarchy because she doesn't get to boss anybody around. That's not true because she bosses me around. But still, that's fine. I'm just teasing a little bit. But here's the thing: that person who we might put at the bottom end of the hierarchy, they see things. He says, so dishwashers will forget who I am, and they'll start talking or complaining because all of a sudden the bus person come running back there and say, "We're out of glasses. We're out of glasses." And they look around and say, "But there's no glasses back here," or they just dropped them off. He said the chefs will come in with their pots and say, "Put them up there. I need this right away. I need this right away," because they didn't plan it out. Or maybe at this particular restaurant, they don't have enough pots. You can find the problem with going to the lowest person in the hierarchy. This is also proven out by Colin Powell, the late Colin Powell, former Joint Chief of Staff. Uh, I forget, he was the leader of the Joint Chief of Staff. Okay, and what he said once he went to also became Secretary of State, and once he started running that department as a Secretary of State, he said that he would when he was in town on Wednesday afternoons, he would go down and sit down with the people in the garage, the valets, the maintenance staff, the people who are in the garage, the parking area. He used to go sit down and so they maybe play cards or something, but they started looking forward to it. The only time he couldn't do it was when he was out of town, and they knew he was out of town in advance. He had no dealings with them at all because he had Secret Service protection, and they had his own entrance to the building, not no secure entrance to the building, and so he didn't have any dealings with them at all except for that Wednesday. So I went there to learn about what was going on internally because they had the information. They talked to everybody who drove up, drove their cars, and they talked to them all. That lowest person on the hierarchy is places where you can get all that information you need. Okay? The other thing you do is look at the job descriptions. Okay, people's resumes. Okay? Those are things you can do to get all that information so you can learn about your people. Now, when you have that one-on-one meeting, here's something I'd like for you to think about doing. I'd like for you to think about asking every single person, what are they passionate about? Okay, what are they passionate about? What are you passionate about? You're going to discover very quickly when the person finally gets around to giving you the honest answer that most people are not passionate about the job. When my dad first started working at the post office, I met his manager, his supervisor, and he said he did that, but he didn't realize what he was doing. He just had bought my dad in, and every new hire he brought him in and said, "Hey, what are you really passionate about? What really excites you?" And he said, "I always heard the same answer at first. The same answer my dad did. Hey, I'm really passionate about doing a good job here at the post office and maybe getting promoted someday." He said, "I always heard that." But he said, "I know that was a bunch of BS." And said, "That's what he told my dad." I said, "That's a bunch of hooey." Except for he used the full BS thing out. "That's a bunch of hooey. Tell me what you're really, truly passionate about." And then my dad finally let it out. "I'm passionate about travel." If I asked you right now, I'm asking you right now, what are you really passionate about? What are you truly passionate about? What's your passion project right now? What is it? It could be work, but very, very few of us have that. Okay. In reality, very, very few of us have the passion project that's work. What are you passionate about? Give me your answers in the question box. I'm asking, what are you passionate about? Firefighting. No. So it would not be wild or weird if you said that you didn't have a passion. Many, many people don't. Okay. Reading, cooking, passionate about fighting for those who cannot speak for themselves. Public service. My family and I like to solve, my family and I like to solve problems. Okay. I'm going to challenge you for the next time we sit down and talk. Okay, that you can tell me what your passion project is. What's your passion project? Okay. Maybe that's a little bit better than saying what are you passionate about right now, but what's your passion project? So a lot of you didn't answer. Okay, a lot of you didn't answer. So and I find that that's just the way that works. Okay. When you know what you're passionate about and you know what your direct reports are passionate about, then it becomes really, really creative but easy to connect their passion to the job. So my dad eventually said, "Hey, I'm super passionate about travel. That's all I ever wanted to do growing up. I just wanted to see more than what I was going to see growing up here in Texas, small city in Texas, Waco, Texas, to be exact." But that was just really, really kind of just that's all he ever dreamed about. And it just so happened, Mr. Dirks, it just so happened that's what I've been passionate about, travel. So he told him, "You know what? You're not making enough money right now. You don't have enough time off to travel the way I think you and I want to travel. Okay, we just don't do it." But yesterday, you told me you're traveling, but let me show you. And said you're going to the Grand Canyon. I'm kind of getting the story mixed up. You said you're going to the Grand Canyon this summer. We were there last summer. let me show you what we did. Let me show you. He's showing them all these pictures and saying, no, when you get ready, if you want to see the sunrise, you get up and don't go to this area where everybody's going to go. Just go about 6 miles past that. And there's a little kind of pull off where you can pull off. That's where you're going to get the best pictures. You can get some good old flapjacks right over here at this restaurant right here. Ask to sit in Rosie's section. I think she'll still probably be there, but ask to sit in Rosie's section because she bent over backwards to give us service. And then ask if she still remembers me because I was kind of a character. That's Mr. Derek's word. But then he went on with it. But he said, "No, what? You really don't have the time or the money to travel the way you need to. You can get there though by taking these tests. So they have civil service tests. And he said, you take these civil service tests, and if you pass them in the top 5%, they have to promote you. So you got to work on these. Let's work because Mr. Derek said, I'm working on my next one, so I'm going to get promoted too because I want more time. And you can do this type of stuff. He took my dad's passion for travel and connected it to the United States. Can you guys think of a more boring job than being at the United States Postal Service sorting mail? I can't think of a more boring job than that. Maybe there's one, I don't know. But he took his passion and tied it to the position. He got to know my dad based on that. They got to be such good friends that here they were going camping together. They would go on camping trips together, each getting their own little camper vans, camper mobile homes, or whatever it was, and they go together. That is getting to know your people. Getting to know your people. The other guideline you got to kind of worry about is this ideal of being productive. Okay? And that begins with this thing of managing your papers. Okay. Now they say papers here. This is the workbook says paper, but let's just know papers means PDF documents. It means spreadsheets. It means email. Okay. And the higher you go up in the organization, the more paper you got to organize. Okay. So grab that extra piece of paper and pencil because now you and I have to talk about something. Okay. We have to talk about something, and I want you to kind of get a hold of this. Okay. So here they talk about different stacks you can have, what's important and not urgent, what's urgent and not important, and what's neither urgent nor important. Okay. I want to share with you what is called the Eisenhower metrics. Okay. How many of you read? Give me a thumbs up if you've read the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Have you read the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People? Throw me a thumbs up if you have, a thumbs down if you haven't. Pretty please with sugar on top. I believe that this book, I don't have any thumbs up yet. So I believe that this book is the operating system. It is the operating system for leaders. See, I'm going to use supervisor, managers to all equal the word leaders. I believe that this book is the operating system for leaders. Like Windows operating system, where you take that the software that's on your computer and it runs because of the operating system, it runs, it works. The same thing. This book is your operating system for being a leader. Your skills and techniques to be a leader all operate on top of that. That would be my suggestion. Okay. We're talking about the 7 habits of highly effective people. We believe in that so much that when we go to a business, okay, before I say this, the organization I work with, we do contract work. We do contract work for prior learning, which is what we're doing right now. Then we also go to companies and we put together a week long or 3 or 4 day long training for them. Okay. When we do that, we give away a copy of this book because we think it's just that important. We think it's just that important. Okay. And one of the habits is actually habit number 3. First things first. You should do first things first. And he spends a lot of time going through this. He spends a lot of time in the book talking about the Eisenhower metrics. I don't think he calls it that, but it's what it is. Okay. It's your ability to be productive. Okay. A lot of the time management gurus will disagree with this system, but he doesn't. So grab that extra sheet of paper and pencil and let me give it to you. Okay. So get, maybe you can borrow it. Maybe you don't have to, but here you go. So the Eisenhower metrics is, it just talks about what it is. It's a decision-making framework that'll help you prioritize and categorize your task based upon the urgency. It's a metrics that is based on the premise that you need to do first things first. Okay. 4 quadrants. We're talking about each of those quadrants here. Okay. 4 quadrants. The first quadrant, well, let's just is the urgent and important task. Okay. Urgent and important. That's just to simply say, let me get this off the screen so I can see what we're doing. Yeah, that's just simply say anything that is important and it has a timeline on it. Okay. It's urgent. It's a timeline on it. So not anything. You got to kind of think about this just a little bit. So I always start with the idea of, okay, if I don't do this today, it's going to cause severe damage, harm, problems. Okay, severe damage, harm, problems. It could cause very severe damage where the organization has to close the doors. Okay, or it doesn't get paid, it messes up on the money. You don't get payroll out. Okay, on time. It could be anything like that. If I don't do this, we're not going to have the materials in the office or in this perfect example. If I don't order these things, we're not going to be able to have surgeries. Severe, urgent, and important items. If I don't do this today, if I don't do this now. So the rough look at it is if you're going through your email and you're just looking at them, the suggestion is as you look at each one of them, you move it into whether it's the proper quadrant. If that email doesn't say that this is going to cause severe damage, it doesn't go here. But if it could cause severe harm, or it needs to really be taken care of, or something's going to go wrong today, or like payroll maybe got to get done today, so everybody gets paid on Monday, this can cause severe damage. That's quadrant number one, urgent and important. Quadrant number two, this is not urgent, but it's important. So these tasks are often related to long-term goals, and they kind of require that you proactively plan. Okay. In other words, you got to put it on your schedule. Okay? It's urgent. Sorry, it's not urgent. There's no timeline on it, but it's important. So there was a time period where my boss was saying, you need to learn Spanish. You need to get good at Spanish. You need to be at least have a conversational level of Spanish. You need to have that. But she wouldn't put a timeline on it, but said it's something we need to do. So if we don't do it, we're giving away money. That's what I'm looking at. Okay. So it's something that I want to do because it's going to help the organization. It's going to help me. I always take it this way. My understanding of it is this way. The better I get at handling items in quadrant two, the more of the important items that take off of quadrant two, even though they don't have a timeline on it, the less pressure ends up in quadrant one or in quadrant three, as a matter of fact. Important and urgent. If you're using Microsoft, for example, Outlook, how well do you know your Outlook? You know it well enough to get by right now. So it's not urgent because you can get by on it, but it's important that you master it because you're there a lot. If you can master all the things, we can't master all the things, maybe you can, but if you can master 20% of Outlook or 20% of Excel, that's important. But you can't do it if you don't put it on your calendar, if you don't block it into your calendar. Okay. Task in quadrant two, as it says on the screen, require proactive planning and execution. Okay. Avoiding urgent and unimportant tasks. Okay. Individuals must get in the habit. That doesn't make sense. By prioritizing quadrant two, individuals effectively manage their time. Okay, so that's true. Quadrant three, urgent but not important. It's urgent, but it's not important. So you have a timeline on it, but it's not going to cause critical harm. In fact, sometimes they say there are often distractions, okay, that can prevent individuals from achieving their goals. They're often distractions. You must minimize as much time as you possibly can in quadrant three. Again, if you're taking care of quadrant two, if you're there as much as you can be, you're getting your skills and your techniques that come up in quadrant two, your skill of being productive. The less you're going to have in quadrant one and quadrant two. I'm quadrant three, excuse me. The less you're going to have in quadrant one and quadrant three, taking pressure off of you, making your life easier. That's all we're saying. It's going to make your life easier. I want to get that quadrant two stuff as much as time as I can. And I need to schedule it so I can get as much relaxation and much abilities to make myself better. While quadrant four is not urgent and not important. Okay. So they're neither urgent nor important and often serve as just plain time wasters. So for me, that's that squirrel. I see a squirrel run across something. I see, no, in other words, I see um, an item that flashes up on my screen or there's an advertisement about something in an email, and I go look at it, and now I'm chasing something down that's not urgent or not important. Okay. It kind of takes a little bit of practice to get that habit going. Okay. You have to really be aware of what's wasting your time. You have to really become aware of what's wasting your time. Your, here's what the quadrant looks like. Okay. Here's what the quadrant looks like. So it's a powerful tool that can help you really individualize your task. It's going to make you a lot more productive. But here's where people kind of struggle with it. When it says first things first, that doesn't mean that you follow some of the other productivity managers' suggestions. They have some suggestions like if it takes you less than 2 minutes, go do it. Yeah. That's not what he's saying here. If it's the most important things, it's the first things first. I do those things first before I do anything else. So far, anything that's going to have a severe impact on your organization, if you don't do it, you got to do it. If it's going to have severe impact when you do it, you do it. That's two items, right? The third item you got to put in that box, the quadrant number one, is any customer complaints. Go there. You get a customer complaint, that goes in your box. That goes into urgent and important. Quadrant two, not urgent but important. You got to plan it. So if you're going to take 8 hours or 6 hours to come to class like this, you got to plan it. Yeah. And it's got to be important enough for you to say, okay, I'm going to plan this time. I'm going to block it out. I'm not going to have the interruptions. I'm going to just make it happen. You got to plan it. If it's not on your calendar, you can't do it, right? You cannot take this class if it's not on your calendar. There's just too much going on. But if you take this class, hopefully you'll start to see where this class will relieve a lot of pressure out of quadrant one and quadrant three. You got a timeline to do something? It's not all that important? Okay, I can delegate that, right? Hmm. Do you guys think we should talk about delegating later today? Thumbs up if you say, yeah, let's talk about delegating later on today or tomorrow. Okay, cool. Because we're going to, whether you threw me a thumbs up or not, we're going to talk about delegating. Yeah. And when we get there, like I said earlier in the day, we're going to know how to do it when we're done. How to do it when we're done. Okay. But I'm going to delegate a lot of that. Okay. If it falls to quadrant four, I'm getting rid of it, at least during business hours. I'm getting rid of it at least during business hours. Okay. Okie dokie, hunky dory. How's everybody doing it? Okay, so we're going to just kind of, like I said, this is where we're skipping slides and um, things in the workbook because I think you just kind of got a good feeling for how to manage your time. Now, there's classes you can take. Those of you who are part of Prior Plus, a third of you that are, is think it's called managing your task, pri- priorities task, priorities and tasks. I'll look it up for you, but it's managing your priorities and tasks. It's a on demand, I believe, that you can take that'll allow you to really get a handle on how to manage my priorities and tasks and how to really sort these things away in these different boxes. Okay. So that's something that we're going to look at. Um, how many of you have goals of what you're going to learn? You're going to learn something. You want to learn Spanish or you want to learn how to do this or that, learn how to do something in Excel? Put it on your schedule. Okay. The next guideline you got to think about is that you have to establish yourself. You have to establish yourself by dealing with the legacy that was left by your predecessor. The computer screen is not anything, not where we are. Okay. But you have to establish yourself and you have to figure out how to deal with the legacy left by your predecessor. There's only three possible situations. Okay. Either they were a saint, which means that everybody or people think they could do no wrong. Okay. They were a tyrant, which means they just micromanaged and they were really tough on people. That was what I was in the previous century. I was a tyrant. Okay. And then you had people who were just kind of indifferent. They just threw their feet up in the desk. They did nothing. And they just let the team figure out what they're going to do. Okay? If you have, if your predecessor is a saint, you have a challenge. Because unless that team has decided that they're a saint because they let them off the hook, but you have a bit of a challenge because you kind of need to monitor them and mirror their activities, okay, and go from there and slowly move in because when that saint left and you're taking their place, there's this thing called trust that you're not going to get, not right away anyway. Okay, you're not the saint, you're the change away from the saint, and whether you're going to be better or not doesn't matter for the first little while because people don't like change. They don't trust change. They don't know where change is going. So what's that kind of means on a level, they don't like you. They don't trust you because they don't know where they're going. The unknown people don't like. And if I have to follow up a saint, that's the issue. And yet, if I have to follow up a tyrant, my predecessor was a tyrant, people don't really trust me because they don't know me for starters, but they also think I'm going to be the typical supervisor, the tyrant, like this person was. People are going to have that suspicion about me that I'm going to be that same way. This is what I found unique about the indifferent predecessor type of person. The person who's kind of indifferent to all this, they just throw their feet up. Some people on that team like that kind of leadership style, the legs up there, and some people don't like it. When you come there, you're going to be kind of in the middle of those two groups. You kind of have to be really careful not to allow those two groups to um, get in, have a divide. Okay? But if you think about your predecessor, where were they? Just think about it. Okay? Where were they? Okay. So Carolyn asked, what about the situation where you're going to be the first? Okay. Cool. You got it made. Okay. You don't have to worry about your predecessor. You kind of got that one made. Okay. You get to set things up. But since you brought it up, be really careful about the pace at which you make changes. As a new manager, first time or position been there before, making changes, quick changes, creates uneasiness, because people don't like changes. You must build your credibility as a leader. And you got to kind of really get out there and establish yourself as a leader. And so, let me see. Da, 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 da. There is no slide. Hold on. See. I think this is in your workbook. Let me just make sure. Da, 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 da. Da, da, da. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, there it is. So, the bullet points to build your credibility. You got to, in order to build that credibility, you do need to start off firm, even tough, but fair. But what I think is the main one there is to be consistent. To be consistent in how you treat everybody on your team. There's a bit of a challenge that's going to be out there, especially if you have people on the team that are your friends. In the question box, tell me if you think that you can be friends with someone who reports to you. That you can be friends with someone who reports to you. What do you think? Can you be friends with people who report to you? Carlos says no, right off. First one, no. By the way, catch. Okay. Carlos, catch. Don't let it hit you in the head. Okay, so we got a lot of people saying no. Um, Sarah says it's a very fine line. Okay, fine, fine line. Caroline says, yeah. Okay. No. Yes, if you set boundaries. Okay. I keeping an eye on the time here as well. Okay, yes, so far. Okay. So we're going back and it's mostly no's, but getting just a couple yeses, and they all seem to have some kind of condition on them. Okay. Going to suggest that you think about this along this line. Okay. Your obligations versus your feelings. Your obligations versus your feelings. Okay. So I'll tell the story in short, real short. Uh, when those these three guys were very best of friends. Okay, best of friends. They were inseparable. They actually even fought a war together. And then when they came back from the war, they all just looked at a map and picked out a city up north and picked the city to move to because they wanted to get out of the south. Okay, so they picked the city, and all three of them moved to that city. All three of them struggled to get positions, but they all three got a position within 1 week of each other at the United States Postal Service. And this was not a great time for people of color. This was way back in the previous century where people of color could not be in the main part of the post office. Okay. They could not use the same restrooms. Okay. They could not eat the lunch in the same place. They had their own separate place. So that even brought them closer together. Although they're a little bit surprised that this happened up north because it always was going on down south. A little bit surprised, but they still didn't really bother them. After my dad had that talk with his supervisor about how he could start to travel more, he caught fire. He said, okay, this is the path. So he took that first test. He scored so high on that first test. Just a moment, please. He scored so high on that first test that he immediately got promoted, immediately got moved up. Hold on just 1 moment, please. Okay, I apologize about that. Okay. All right. So he immediately got promoted. So, but his test scores were so high that within 3 weeks, he got a second promotion. Then he took the other test, the next level going up, civil service test, and he got promoted about 6 months later. But when he got that third promotion, he was sent back to the main post office where his two buddies were. Now, he went to one of his buddies and said, well, he went to them both actually and said, started trying to tell them, what they need to do. One of them said, hey, whatever you need to do, just tell me. I'm cool with it, just whatever you need. The other one said, hey, listen, I've known you forever. Don't you think you can tell me what to do? Don't you ever think you can tell me what to do? I don't care what you think you are, what you think your title is. Don't you ever tell me what to do. This gentleman had to make a decision about what was more important, his obligations or his feelings. He had to make that decision. Here's the upshot of his decision. Before I was 12 years old, I saw 38 of the 50 United States before I was 12. My brother, my sister, and myself all were able to attend the University of Colorado debt free. We were able to move up and go to different. By the time we got ready to go to graduate school, that was going to be on us. But both of us who went to graduate schools got scholarships. It was paid for. All because my dad decided that his obligations were more important than his feelings. When you look at what he thought his obligations were and how strong they were, meant that we got to see the world. This gentleman who told him, don't ever tell him what to do, I he really kind of dropped out of the picture. I don't really remember seeing him until my parents hit their 60th wedding anniversary about 10 years ago. He was at that celebration. Which was more important to you? Your obligations versus your feelings. Now, keep in mind that you also have to think about what your culture is, culture of your workplace. There's certain cultures. If you're working for a mom and pop place, if you're a family kind of place, feelings are going to kind of get there. So you have to decide, and I'd like for you to declare it in the question box: obligations or feelings. Which one's most important to you? Think about it and then declare it in the question box: obligations or feelings. Okay. Most of us are right about obligations. They're saying no feelings yet, which is kind of a bit of a surprise for as big as the room is. You usually get one, maybe two that see this as feelings. Yeah, there's one. Okay, feelings are more important. Okay, you must set this up where you're consistently treating. If you have friends on the job, the same as you're treating everybody else. In order for that to happen, they have to have an agreement. They got to be like Mr. Carroll was to say, "Hey, whatever you need." Now, the obligation part of this went a lot further than just his family. Okay, my dad had an obligation that he felt to the postal service. Here's what happened. Here's the upshot of that. He became one of the first black postmasters in the United States in the postal service. He became one of the first. He's the first black postmaster in the United States because of his obligation to the postal service, his obligation of doing the job right. By the way, Mr. Carroll, my dad, and Mr. Derrick, they all started working together, studying together. Mr. Carroll and my dad traveled until my dad couldn't travel anymore. About 6 months, well, about a little bit longer than that before he finally made his transition. But they traveled together because they all wanted to do these things. But Mr. Carroll rose up in the Postal Service as well to become the first black postal inspector in the United States because they felt the obligation of taking care of their families and the obligation to where they were working. That is the power of understanding what your obligations is. The feelings, okay, well, the person who told him, hey, you just continue, don't tell us what to do, stayed as a clerk, stayed sorting mail the whole time, retired sorting mail. And that was good for him. He didn't have that ambition. Okay? It's good for him. But still, everybody needed to be treated consistently. It needed to be consistent all the way across the board. That next bullet point, deal directly with the employee who thinks he or she should have gotten that same job. Okay. Three quick steps. Let me check the time here. Three quick steps. Okay. Number one, well, story. That's one of my stories. So it happened to me, and I got lucky with this one. So the guy's name was Paul. We both were competing for the same job. The challenge was I had been there for 6 weeks. He had been there for 6 years. Okay. We both interviewed for the job, and he and I became the finalists for the job as the product trainer. Okay. I won. And so I had to do number one. First step, acknowledge the disappointment. Okay. I had to acknowledge the disappointment. Okay. And this has to be done face to face. You must acknowledge the disappointment because you know what? And this is what I told Paul. I know you had to be disappointed because had it been me, I would have been disappointed. And that's how I decided that's the best way from now on to acknowledge that person's disappointment. I can feel your pain. I understand where you're coming from. And in this case, because I would have been. Okay. Number two, you must give them a win. You must give them an immediate win. In that same conversation, give them a win. So again, I know you have to be disappointed, Paul, because if you had beaten me, I'd be disappointed. His win was, Paul, you got this going on. When I found out it was you that I was going to be competing against, it made me work 10 times as hard. That was his win. That I recognized that dude was smart. He had it going on. And if I hadn't worked 10 times as hard, he would have just crushed me on that. But because he had the brain power, this ability to think about it, I had to work 10 times as hard. So I gave him an immediate win. Okay? And then you have to let him know how important he is, either to the organization, mostly it's going to be the organization, or to yourself. So I did it to myself. I said, so Paul, listen, because you really know what you're doing. You really got to go now. Can I use you as a sounding board every now and then? Would you mind if I just came and got your advice? Now, honestly, Paul wasn't quite feeling this. He was a little bit upset still that I had won out and he didn't get the position. But I put that was the framework. And I meant it. So I was going to get my first class. And so I was getting just working through my plan. And I got to the part where Paul just flatly just knew it. Okay. He was just a subject matter expert. He just knew it. So I went to him and said, Paul, Tuesday and Wednesday of this week, we're teaching this class. Would you, why don't you come in and teach it? Why don't you just come on in and teach it? I meant it. And he taught it. He was my best friend from that moment on, kind of, because he's always offering me things that I should do or that he wanted me to do or things like that. And but he came in and he taught the class those 2 days. Loved it. Acknowledge the disappointment, give them an immediate win, and let them know how important they are to you or to the organization still. That's all there is to that one. Page 4 in your workbook. I'm gonna have to pick up a little bit of speed here. The fifth guideline: establish a good working relationship with your new boss. Establish a good working relationship with your new boss. That's the guideline I want you guys to think about doing. How are you going to do that? Okay. All right. Hold on. I look like I missed a Kahoot question here. So let's just do it real quick. Dun, dun, dun. No, we'll do it later. We'll do that one later. We won't try to hunt it down right now. Okay. But you got to establish a good working relationship with your boss. So my first question for you, workbook page 4. What are your boss's likes and dislikes? So that's not my first question. My first question to you is, how does your boss decide you're doing a good job? What are the top three ways your boss decides you're doing a good job? In other words, what are your top three KPIs? What are your top three KPIs? So let me rephrase that for you. Remember, I said KPIs, key performance indicators. We asked that question earlier in the day. So now I'm defining it for you. How does your boss decide you're doing a good job? How do they decide that? They, how do they know you're doing a good job? Can you tell me what that is? The top three ways your boss knows you're doing a good job? And when you tell me that, it needs to be something that's very specific. Okay. It needs to be very specific. And plus, you need to know how they're measuring it. What are they using to measure it? Okay. And you automatically need to know whether it's aligned with what the company's doing. That should be automatic. And it should be relevant to your job. Okay. And it should have a timeline on it. But that measurement should possibly be a metrics. Okay. No errors in work. Okay. One out of three. Okay. Work produced, projects taken on. Let me read the whole thing. Okay, okay, that's okay. Work produced and projects taken on. So, how many projects do you need to take on, and how does that compare to last year at the same time or last quarter? How much work do you need to produce, and what's the measurement for him to decide? Okay, or her to decide. That's okay. You're right. You produce three things. Okay, but you need to produce 10 items. Okay, for that person to decide you're doing a good job. Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Let me read this one from Carlos. Okay. Okay. So they decided you're doing a good job because you didn't have to cancel cases due to the lack of materials and challenging times for product shortages. One. What's the other two? Okay. And only a couple of you have answered because I don't really think you're going to know this one quite yet. But to be honest, I don't think you're really going to know this one quite yet. RFPs are completed on time. Okay, so the RFPs, request for proposals, are completed on time. Savings is tracked and above goals. Okay, what is the goal? Okay, what is that? Okay, do RFPs have to be completed on time 100% of the time? Okay. Or do you have to complete more RFPs than what you did last year during this quarter? Ladies and gentlemen, the top three ways your boss decides you're doing a great job. And the reason why I don't think you can really know that right now because you haven't talked to them about it. And there's a good chance they haven't thought about it themselves. When you are able to get clarity, when you know specifically what it is they're looking for, and you know how they measure it, and you know the time period you have to get it done. That comes from what a lot of people talk about. That's how you set goals. No, that's not how you set goals. That's how you set your expectations. SMART. That's how, if you're reporting to me, I'm setting your expectations. I want it to be very, 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 very clear. I'm sorry. Very clear. Okay. I want you to be able to go back to your desk and say, okay, I got this thing to do, this things to do, this things. Okay. Surgeons haven't complained about materials or instruments. Okay. Okay. If I was going to take that one apart, okay, so I would say, at what level is it okay for a surgeon to complain about it? Okay. Because you're not perfect. So I'm going to say in 98% of the cases, the surgeon does not complain about the materials or the instrument. So surgeons are not going to complain about the materials or instruments. They're very specific. 98% of the time, okay, that's the start of the measurement or the metrics. Okay, 98% of the time, every quarter. So now we got the two numbers to make it a metrics. Okay. Now we know it's an alignment with what the organization needs, and we know it's relevant, the R, to what your job is, and it needs to be done by the end of this quarter. That's the timeline is bounded up by that time. 98% of the time the surgeons are in there, you're doing a good job if you don't get any complaints. Because we're not perfect. We're humans. But if you go to 97%, I'm going to be a little bit upset at you because you didn't do your job. 100%, if I'm going to set a goal of 100% all the time, then that may be a goal because that's going to be difficult. Or you can do what my boss does. So she says when I do the week-long workshops or the 3 to 5 day workshops, she wants 2.5% of the people, without me asking, 2.5% of the people to take the time to write a compliment. Okay? I'm sorry, and that's not what she's referring to exactly. When I do a keynote, okay, when I do a keynote, 2.5% people who do, so I did a keynote in June, 7,000 people. 2.5% of people needed to write what I did a good job. Okay. Social media or send an email in, but it needed to be written, not just say, Glenn did a good job. Yay. Smiley face Glenn. They had to write. That's how she knew I was doing a good job on the road. You need that same thing. Please hear me. These top three things usually comprise 20% of your day. Okay. 20% of my day is making sure that I've hit these top three things that my boss is looking for. Sometimes it's a lot less, sometimes it's a hair more, but usually it takes up about 20% of my day. That equals 80% of my results. The Pareto rule, right? 20% of my effort creates 80% of my results. That's going to be really strong. Let me add this piece of caveat in. That's why these three things that my boss is using to judge whether I'm doing a good job or not go into the urgent and important box. Those three things are urgent and important because they create 80% of my results. Wouldn't it be great? There's some people who've gotten it down to there's 5% of my effort is going to create 95% of my results. Okay. But that's how that principle works. So those top three things, I'm going to suggest that before the end of this class is over with today or tomorrow, that you reach out to your boss and say, hey, can we meet in 10 days? Give them 2 weeks. Because the class you made me go to, we discussed my key performance indicators. How does my boss know I do a good job? I want to sit down with you so I know exactly how you are going to judge me. I'm doing a good job. What is your expectation of me? Now, once you have that, how much easier is it going to be for the people who report to you for you to give them their expectation? I expect this, and here's how I'm going to measure it. Here's how it relates to the company. Here's how it aligns with what the company is. Here's how it's relevant to your job. And here's when you need to have it done by. Or here's a time period for it. When you know exactly, specifically, how your boss knows you're doing a good job, it's going to be 10 times easier for you to explain that to your team in their one on one meetings. Da, 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 da. Questions or concerns? It is critical, critical, critical that you understand. Okay. Yeah. So Carl's jumped on it right away, but Carl, you kind of already had it though. So let me just read your whole thing. Okay. You were close, so I can see where you might not have. I think you kind of already had at least one or two. Okay. So yeah. So maybe the rest of you could take up what Carlos said. He did it. He did it while he was on the spin. He just said, "Hey." Here's a meeting I want to have with you. You got to give them time though. Okay. You don't want to say, I want to meet with you this afternoon. I want to meet with you this week. Because just like you're not really sure what people report to you, what their expectation is, he's not really sure or she's not really sure. You're not going to give them some time to think about it. That way, when you're get his, you're much better able to give theirs. Okay. But again, just to emphasize, this is where you got to go ahead and put it inside of their inside of the urgent and important box. Urgent and important. All right. Let's see if we can catch up on our time here real quick, and then we'll take a quick break. So the three P's, I think is what we want to look at here is understanding how to prevent the unwelcome surprises. And it takes three P's, okay? You must be prepared. You must be prepared. It takes preparation. You must start to pay attention to what's going on two positions above you. What's that person who's two positions above you? What is their concern? You can bet that that's coming to you. If I know what the concern is, it's not going to be a surprise, right? You must always, always be poised. You must always be poised. Okay? You must always start looking for ways to emphasize and identify potential problems early. So, in other words, you're going to look at two people above you for poise, and I'm sorry for preparation, but prevention. I'm going to start looking at the industry. What's going on industry wise, or in some cases, government wise. In other words, you guys not going to like this. It's time for you to start reading your trade journals. Time for you to start reading the government reports that have something to do with your organization. Okay. When I get that information in, that's going to be prevented. The government's getting ready to pass something. Okay. The government's getting ready to do something, or they're not going to do something. That's going to start preparing for the problem to help to prevent it. That's what that's all going to come down to. Grab a piece of paper and pencil. Here's your 7 guidelines. Okay. Learn about your people. One-on-one meetings. Manage your incoming information. The 4 quadrants. Deal with the legacy left behind by your supervisor. You have to build trust. Build your credibility. Be consistent. Establish a good working relationship with your new boss. Find out how they decide you're doing a good job. Try to prevent unwelcome surprises. The last one was before this one was to demonstrate loyalty to your boss. When your boss ask you to do something or ask you to put out a new message, even if you disagree with it, it must feel like you agree with it and it's coming from you. I will throw this caveat in. If I'm talking, my boss says, "Hey, we're going to start doing this. We want to start doing this," and I disagree with it, and we talk about it, my boss still says, "Hey, you got to do that." Okay, I'm going to stand with it, just like it's my ideal. 100% behind it. I'm firm with it. I'm also going to take care of something though. If you have an HR department, go talk to your HR specialist, see if you can do this. I was able to do this. And we're talking about in this last century before I came to this position. In this last century, if I had the challenge come up and I didn't agree with it, I just felt like it's going to lead to a court case, I wrote myself an email explaining the situation on this date, and I emailed it to me that day because I wanted to be time stamped. However, the guy's name was Michael Jordan, who's head of our HR department. He was actually the president of SHRM, who, by the way, the regional office of SHRM. So he said, "Hey, if you don't want me to follow up on this, which I think I might have to anyway, but if you don't want me to use your name or anything like that, it's fine. But you can email me this. You can email it to me so I can put it in your records. I have a little folder for you set up, so I'll just put in that folder for you. So if it does come back, and this is going to come back, if it does come back, though, you're not going to be in line with that. You had to do this, and this worked out. So just real quick, the reason why this worked out so well for me is because when the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, did their research and did their investigation, they fined me $7,000, fined my boss $7,000, and then fined the organization $7,000 because we were in violation. Well, all MJ had to do was show my letter saying that I disagreed with this, but because I had to do it, that's the only reason I did it. My fine was rescinded. I didn't have to pay it. My boss had to pay the fine. The organization had to pay the fine. And my boss had to go find a new job. Well, I took his job. I know that sounds kind of protect yourself is all we're saying. Okay. Be loyal, but protect yourself. Okay, so I have 36 minutes after the hour. So please be back 36, 46, 46, 51. I'll learn how to count. Please be back at 51 minutes past the hour. We'll see everybody at 51 minutes past the hour.